This is Patsy Moses, Conjure Doctor from Fort Bend, Texas. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think I just gave this a few days ago, but it did not have a picture associated with it. And the interview part that I read did not mention that she was a Conjure Doctor at all. But here we go. I have found more information on her, and she is indeed a Conjure Doctor. Now, she goes on to say that she learned all of her spells from her mama and daddy and the old folks. Now, she also talks about a night the stars fell. It was not the 1833 meteor shower, but it was a different event. She says, I can remember telling him about the revival meeting when the stars fell. When he was just starting to preach, he was holding one of his first big meetings, but none of the young folks were paying him any attention. He was trying to get them to come to the mourner's bench and give their hearts to the Lord. They had been preaching, praying, singing so much, but they still wouldn't come to the bench. He was telling them about the fire and brimstone coming down from heaven, coming to destroy them. Then, all of a sudden, it got dark. Pretty soon, a star shot across the sky like a rocket. Then another, and then another. Then, it looked like all the stars in heaven were about to fall. Then both the sinners and the church members came as quick as they can to the altar on their knees and started to pray. They started saying, "Oh, Lord, don't shoot me. I promise I'm going to do right from this day on. God, don't let me be killed." And they went on all night just like that. The Lord was showing them what he could do to them if they wouldn't do what he wanted them to do. The Bible told them about the fire and brimstone, and they had to be shown. Yeah, my granddaddy said that the Lord had to preach to them that night. So he sent down the fire to show them who was boss and that they couldn't play with God. It was a long time before they stopped being scared to ignore the Lord again. But they got the message to come to the mourner's bench and give their lives to God. Now, even though her and her parents practiced a little bit of conjure, her grandfather was a preacher, and she said that the church people would come to him all the time asking about the signs, and he'd always say, well, y'all should have came to me first. She says that the church people would come to her grandfather all the time and tell them about all the spells that they believed were put on them, and they would ask him to break it for them. So in that way, I guess you could say that her grandfather practiced a little bit too, although she doesn't go into specifics on what he did. But she does say this. First, I'd to hear him tell the candidates about baptism. They'd have to roll on the ground all night and then fast until the Lord came through. When they did this, they were so weak that they could hardly believe that God was talking to them. It was believed that God and his angels had shown themselves to the sinner and that he was talking to them. This is what they called the vision-seeing stage, and if a candidate choked on water while they were being baptized, then it was believed they had not truly accepted religion. Now, she also goes on to talk about dream signs. She says that everybody believed in dream signs. To dream of a thing or a person is a good sign. To dream of something black or a black figure is a bad sign. If a Christian dreams of a devil chasing them, then that means they need to pray more. And I told you this in my other video that she said to dream of clear water means that you're on the right side of God. To dream of an angel is a sign of good luck. Now, if you dream of an angel coming towards you, that's even better luck. But if the angel is walking away from you, then that means you need to reform. I left off with her talking about the rabbit's foot that President Grover Cleveland carried. Now, this was the foot of a rabbit that was killed on Jesse James' grave. And she goes on to say, in order for the rabbit to keep its luck, you need to pour whiskey on it every now and then. Now, I did some digging, and yes, it was a sort of speculated that Grover Cleveland did carry a rabbit's foot with him during that election cycle, which is how he won. And as I've talked about before, there have been plenty of presidents who have carried other talismans, mojo bags, and things like that to bring them luck. And even with the talk of Trump's egregore, so this is a known thing among politicians. And if you watch the new Captain America, while it wasn't anything magical that the president was using, he was still using a little bit of something to his advantage. Now, she also goes on to talk about some of the things that they would do under the moon cycles. If you show money to the new moon, then you'll have money all month long. If you show money to the moon and you throw 5 kisses at it, you'll also have 5 wishes. And all 5 of those wishes will be granted before the end of the month. Now, it wasn't uncommon to see conjurers sit under the dark and the light of the moon because you could cause things to waste away in the dark and cause things to grow in the light. Now, if you were sick, all tonics should be given during the full moon, just like you should only plant certain crops during the full moon as well. Soaps should be made and hogs killed during the full moon. And if you killed any meat during the dark of the moon or the new moon, it's said that the meat would be tough or they wouldn't make any lard. Then she goes on to talk about the New Year luck signs. Yes, it is lucky to eat black-eyed peas and a hog's head on New Year's Day. It means that you'll have plenty to eat all year and you'll have as much money as you have peas to eat. So for everybody wondering about the black-eyed peas stuff for New Year's, yes, apparently this has been a thing for a very long time. Well, no duh, we know that. But start eating your peas, folks. Also, the first 12 days of January is what you will be doing all year. So she ends that section with, I've told you everything that I know about the conjure doctors and the signs, but now here's a little story about the old witches. On a dark Halloween night, there was 3 old witches sitting by the fire cooking up their supper. The wind was howling like it was nothing, and the witches sat by the fire talking about all the spells they were going to cook up at midnight. But just before midnight, there's a knocking at the door. Who's that? Calls one of the witches. One that's hungry and cold. Hoo, 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 said a voice. Then the old woman started laughing and said, we's cooking for ourselves. Who's cooking for you? Hoo, hoo, hoo. Then the voice said again, let me in. I's cold and I'm hungry too. Then those old witches kept on laughing and started singing, get along, we's cooking for ourselves. Who'll cook for you? Hoo, hoo, hoo. Now the voice didn't say anymore, but the knocking did keep going. The old women hitched their chairs up to the fire, but the knocking kept going. Go away, who? We're cooking for ourselves. Who'll cook for you? Hoo, hoo, hoo. The voice didn't answer, but the knocking kept going. Finally, they decided to give it something in order to break the spell. So they took a little piece of dough, put it in the frying pan, and it began to swell. It swelled all over the frying pan, all over the stove, and all over the floor. But still, the voice didn't say anything, and the knocking kept going. The dough swelled all over the kitchen and the witches ran to the door, but they couldn't get it open. The knocking kept going and the witches shrank smaller and smaller. Them old witches' eyes got bigger and bigger, then they got scared. Then they called out, who's that knocking on the door? Hoo, hoo, hoo. Then the knocking stopped and the voice said, fly out the window, do, do, do. Then they flew out the window and off into the wood, calling, who'll cook for you? Who'll cook for you? Hoo, hoo, hoo. And now if you go into the woods on the dark of the moon calling hoo, 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 you'll see those old lady witches turned into owls and hear them calling back. Go away, do. We'll cook for ourselves. Who will cook for you? Hoo, hoo, hoo.